I'm going to be talking predominantly about the topics and the issues that I do on my profile. So we're going to be talking predominantly more on the toxic parent stuff. And as always, I'll be looking for a bit of interaction, see if any questions and stuff like that come in, and I can pick up on them. But I wanted to pick up on a few things that I said often that I get commented on when I post socials on here and over on Instagram as well, and try and maybe explore them a little bit. And see where we go with it. We'll see how long we're going to be on here, see how many questions we get and stuff like that, and see where we go. But the first place that I wanted to start was with the smear campaign that comes from toxic people. But, you know, particularly in this sense, when we're talking about toxic parents, I don't think some people that have never been on the end of a smear campaign know exactly what a smear campaign is and just how bad it can get. I get a lot of people that say, you know, if they get pulled in by the smear campaign, then who cares about them? They're not worth it anyway. And I understand why people say that. But I think it's more complex than that, right? Because when this toxic person starts the smear campaign, right, they're not just running around telling everybody that you know that you're horrible and saying nasty things about you. It's way more subconsciously done than that. I don't want to give them the grace of saying it's way more clever than that, but they're going to infiltrate you, right? They're going to go to the people that you care about the most, the people that care about you. If it's a toxic parent, they're going to go to your siblings, and they're not going to go straight in with saying horrible stuff. They're going to put themselves at the center of what they tell these people, make out that they're the victim, and they'll use little half-truths, right? Things that carry some weight, or they'll twist and manipulate things that you might have said and done in the past. And that's really going to be then able to manipulate the people that they're interacting with into thinking that you're the abuser and they're the victim. So it's too simplistic and too easy to say, if people get drawn in by that, then, you know, you cut them off and you hate them too. Because the people that are doing this, the people that are heading up these smear campaigns, they're way, way, way more clever than that. And they're gonna pull a lot of people in, right? They're gonna pull a lot of people in. And I don't think people quite understand that. And that's how it remains, right? That's how the smear campaign remains a form of abuse long after you've escaped, you know, the abusive setup that you may have had with them people. And I think that's, again, like I say, I think that's what people really struggle with. Particularly people that get upset with the content that I post. They either don't understand it or are triggered by it in some way. But then I think even well-meaning people will often talk about this idea of sort of like rationalizing your way out of this being a problem for you, right? They'll say things like, just forget it, cut them out and don't let them be a part of your life right now. As if when you get rid of an abusive, toxic person like that, that they just go, okay, I've been cut out, let me just understand that and move on. They're always going to infiltrate the people that you care about most, because that's their way of being able to abuse you from afar. So the abuse doesn't just stop, right? And this is why forgiveness that a lot of people talk about becomes really, really difficult and way more messy than this kind of spiritual enlightened idea of forgiveness that you see online. Because even if you worked to forgive the things that they did to you and the way that they showed up in your life when you allowed them in your life, right? You could do loads of work around that, reach some place of feeling like you could let that stuff go. And then they're going to be going in the background, right? They're going to be making, and they are the experts. Let me tell you this, they are the experts at making themselves be liked by everybody else, right? And then you say something, yeah? Somebody comes to you and says how amazing this person is that you know is toxic, right? In your life. They come and say, and then you say something about them, and guess what? You look like the unreasonable one. You look like the one that needs to calm down and get back in their box and all that kind of stuff. And so you see, they're using, it's like using reactive abuse from afar. Let me see this. Let me read some of this. Your videos are so helpful. I had a massive toxic relationship with my dad. I was sorry to hear that. I'm about to go no contact with my dad for the second and final time. I thank you for all you do. Thank you. Hi from Birmingham. I'm the only child of a narcissistic, toxic mum here. Toxic mums in some ways as well. become even more difficult to talk about, right? Because we have this thing where you just, you can't do that, because mums in general, normal mums, for want of a better term, mums that aren't toxic are always doing their best, right? And many of them are put under a lot more pressure, particularly because of societal stuff, than perhaps other parents, right? But when you're talking about a toxic one, that people find that just so hard to even comprehend. So I feel for you. I've got to go, but you're appreciated. Don't worry, this will be on YouTube, by the way. Yeah, so Kaylee's saying here, I don't forgive for them, I forgive for me. And I understand that. And I know that what a lot of people say is that forgiveness is about letting go of the grip that it has on you. And I totally understand that. But look, I wouldn't even begrudge somebody for saying they don't want to use the word forgiveness because it sounds too nice to the person that they've cut out. I wouldn't begrudge somebody doing that. And if forgiveness is this idea that we cut them away from that and we allow ourselves some freedom from that, then again, I completely understand that. But I think particularly when it's like a toxic parent, right, they don't just go away. Even if you cut them out and you have all the boundaries in the world, then all of a sudden, I don't know, like a Christmas card pops through the door after 3 years of no contact to one of your kids or something like that, right? As if nothing's happened, by the way. And so then, like, it brings it all back up, and then you have to re-go again. And I think that's why it makes it, why it's really messy. Do you have any advice for, hang on. Do you have any advice for partners who are not sure how to be there for us with a narcissistic, toxic parent? Advice to somebody that loves somebody that has a narcissistic and toxic parent. My advice to the people that love them is to believe, listen to, and witness, to believe, listen to, and witness the person who has a toxic parent's experience. If you love somebody that's got a parent like that, your job is not to make it better. You can't make it better, right? There's nothing that those people can say to you that are going to stop your mum or your dad being this horrible, narcissistic, toxic person that they might be, right? There's nobody that can do that. But what they can do is help you to feel supported in your experience. They can do what society doesn't do, which is actually believe you and your experience, understand that your experience is real, and stop trying to compare it or trying to bring that experience into something that matches up to their experience. So they have to like really understand that and do a bit of research as well. But ultimately, it's that for me is about holding space, right? And understanding that you can't rationalize this stuff. You cannot rationalize it. You cannot rationalize somebody who is completely irrational. And that's the hard thing, yeah. Thank you, Mandy. I validate your feelings. Thank you for making sense of my life right now. Thank you. Married into a narc family in August. Mill rejected me, bride, on my wedding day. Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, that's really hard as well, right? Because if you're coming into that situation, you either buy into it, yeah, or you become the enemy as well. And much like when the person within a toxic family who has toxic parents starts talking the truth, then they're going to become the black sheep, right? And they're going to be ostracized. I think if you come into a family like that and you start talking truth, then you'll be ostracized as well. So you won't be accepted, right? So then it becomes like another problem. Agree with the mother talk. Unfortunately, mine passed just as our relationship was getting better. Oh, I'm sorry to read that. I have a very narcissistic mum and she has turned my whole family against me and I'm finding it so hard. You see, this is so common. And this is why it's a form of abuse, right? And this is why I don't like people talking too much about forgiveness to somebody like yourself, right? Because maybe one day that might be a sort of place that you can reach, but I really don't think it's helpful and I don't think it's useful and I don't think it's validating to tell somebody who's experiencing this kind of stuff that you need to work towards forgiveness. I just don't believe it's helpful, I don't believe it's useful, and I don't believe it's validating. And I think a lot of people push that narrative as a way of suppressing and pushing down true feelings, right? Push it down into my body. I forgive. I'm okay with it. It's cool. Let's move on. It's very different to, I think, I'm not okay with what's happened. I'm not about to forgive. I'm not about to let somebody have that kind of freedom from my mind. I recognize how horrible they were. I recognize the issues that they caused, and I recognize my experience as a result of that. And I choose not to allow that person to have influence on my life. Now, some people would say that's forgiveness. I think it's slightly different. My mum only bothers with me when I achieve academically, to give her something to brag about. Yeah, so like one of the common things that toxic parents will do in today's world is be horrible to you, or at best completely disinterested with you, right? With anything that you do, no interest in the way that you go about your business or finding out about you and your life. But then when you do something that's very nice and social mediaable, that can really help them to put themselves on a pedestal, then all of a sudden they're all interested and they want to be there. And one of the things that I think a lot of people with these kind of parents find really frustrating and really difficult is when parents do this, right? When these toxic parents who are just disinterested and horrible throughout most of the time, and all of a sudden are posting these gushing social media posts just because you've done well at something, yeah? So that everybody can say, oh, you must be so proud, you must be da-da-da. And like, you want to, these children that are experiencing that want to go on the post and like call it out and be like, don't be like, it's nothing to do with you, I did this myself, right? But then guess what? In the way that we've talked about with the smear campaign and the making themselves brilliant all of the time, it makes it look like you're the crazy one, yeah? You're the one who needs to change your attitude, when it's not true, yeah? I have a narcissistic dad and a toxic mum. I've recently cut out my dad, had so much control. Well, power to you for managing to do that. Sorry, let me just get back to where I was. My mum used me as the scapegoat to create a diversion to distract attention from her toxic marriage. That's really common within dysfunctional family systems, right? Is that a scapegoat is created so that everybody gets to, because everybody's full of anger because of the problem. Yeah, this happens a lot in alcoholic homes, for example. If you have a parent that's trapped in addiction, rather than everybody looking at the issue, which is somebody's drinking, right? Or somebody's addiction, everybody directs all of their difficult and angry feelings towards somebody else within the family, who then gets scapegoated. So everybody gets to take out their anger and all their dark feelings on somebody, right? But nobody has to stare the issue in the face and actually see it for what it is, which is either like a toxic parent or even just a parent that's struggling with addiction. And then so somebody gets scapegoated. When that happens to children, by the way, those children then recognize and understand that their role within the family system, in order to fit into that family system, they have to literally go out and do bad stuff so that they can be scapegoated. It's like a subconscious thing, right? But you see that play out a lot. Does a toxic parent have to be a narcissist? Look, the terminology thing comes up a lot, right? Toxic parent is what I use to just be quite clear about it. I honestly think, and this, I don't want this to sound sort of like as a flippant comment, but I think if you've got one, you know. And you know only through horrible research. And the horrible research is day-to-day battle to try and get them to at least come over and see some of your opinions and your way of life, and to at least try and see things from your point of view. So a lot of people will say, narcissistic is not, we don't have tendencies, it's not this or it's not that, and they get upset if you use that word. So I sort of think people can use whatever words they want, but if you watch a lot of my content, I think you know. So I just think people should use whatever terminology they want. And if it's something that you're not sure about, and then stay curious about it. And I know that's not easy, but yeah. So like when I say toxic parent, I just think it is one of them things when you know. I cut my dad out of my life at 18. As much as I tried, it was never enough. Horrible, and how awful for you that you had to do that. And how awful that you had to do that in a world that seems to not be able to accept that that was your only option. Makes you feel more sane. Good, you are sane. Hey Sabrina, good to have you. Forgiveness is not access. Lucifer wasn't allowed back to heaven. I'm guessing that's biblical. I don't know much about that. Have you read It Didn't Start With You? I have, yeah. I'm a little bit of an obsessive reader. Have read that one a few years back, but I have read it, yeah. It's what I call pseudo-forgiveness, which functions to re-establish the status quo. Yeah, I really like that. I can't say it now. Pseudo forgiveness, right? I do think there's a lot of that round, right, where forgiveness is, and not true for everybody, but I do think forgiveness is often used as a way of sort of spiritually bypassing. What people do is they say, I've forgiven and I've forgotten, I've put it all back in its box and it's go away and I'm not affected by it anymore, yeah? And I'm shouting at the dog every day and I can't stand my own children, yeah, but I've forgiven all this stuff and over there. It's very similar to the kind of scapegoating thing, right? Which is like we put it in a box and do it there. So I think when we're being really honest, I think when people are being really honest with themselves, it's a lot more messy than that. And look, there might be days when you go, you know, I completely understand and, you know, it's not a part of my life. And then there's other days when it don't. And both can be true, right? But I think when I see people commenting on my stuff, just going, you should just forgive and forget, right? You need to work towards forgiveness. There's part of me that thinks, why are you saying that? And I think sometimes they're saying it because they're using forgiveness to bypass their emotions, and people being open about about their struggles and about the fact that they're not there yet makes that person that's bypassing, using forgiveness as bypassing, it makes them feel uncomfortable. Yeah, because it brings it up. Not always. I think some people do reach, you know, a nice place of forgiveness. But I think if those people then get uncomfortable with somebody else who doesn't move towards forgiveness, okay, then I question that. I wasn't okay with my dad's behaviour. I won't forgive. I had to cut him out for my own peace of mind. Yeah, no, I'd see, look, I think power to you for that. A power to you. My husband and I are no contact 4 months post-wedding with his parents. They are silent. Yeah, and you know, but there's still that fear, right? I'm sure there's still that fear of just when are they going to pop up? When and why are they going to pop up and what's it going to look like? My mum criticised me my entire life. I'm 36, even sent me quite a toxic birthday card yesterday. Yeah, and this is what they will do, right? And the fact that they've sent a birthday card, and again, we live in a society where I'd imagine when you say the birthday card was quite toxic, I'd imagine that the wording in it was such that if you showed that birthday card to somebody, they would say, oh, it seems to me like she's making an effort. And if you were like, no, this is being said, then it almost starts to seem like you're the crazy one, yeah? So you end up having to, you're pushed into silence. And I think this happens a lot, right? They get access to you in a way, normally, unless they've lost their mind, which happens a lot, right? But normally they'll get to you in a way where if you showed it to other people, the other people would just think, you know, you need to let it go. When it's not like that. Subtle, clever, little like power manipulations that keep control of you. And they're very good at doing it from afar when they need to. I feel like a toxic magnet. No contact with my mum, family for 6 years, and my partner's family are the same. You say you feel like a toxic magnet. I understand why you feel that. Listen, let me say this. I don't think you're a toxic magnet. I don't think anybody's a toxic magnet. I think toxic people prey on anybody. And if the only people that were supposed to love and make you feel safe when you were younger were toxic, then it may be that you somehow stay in those relationships maybe a little bit longer than other people. And look, your partner's family, you and your partner probably relate, right? Because you've had similar experiences. My parents wanted me to love them unconditionally, but I had to earn their love. To forgive is hard. Yeah, and I think that's like another common thing. So these parents that I'm talking about see their children as an extension of themselves, right? So they say lots of things like, after everything I did for you, I raised you. How dare you? For 20 years of your life, it was me that did all of this stuff for you, and this is how you treat me, right? And all that kind of stuff, you know, when they're using that stuff against you, then it means that they never really did it for you, doesn't it, right? It actually shows that they did it for themselves, right? Because they did it to be able to then weaponize it. Would you say it's best to oh, it's flicked away. The chat function goes a bit silly. Bear with me. I'm quite behind on the question. Would you say it's best to acknowledge the situation you're in? I just cannot understand people. Yeah, look, I think you should. I think it's when you're ready, it's best to acknowledge the situation you're in. I hope I don't know if I'm understanding the question properly. You can practice forgiveness and understanding to heal you. This helps massively to heal. Yeah, I think it probably does help some people. I've done some pretty good healing. I mean, I've not had I don't have a toxic parent, but I've done some pretty thorough, deep healing. And there's people in my life that I don't forgive, but they don't have an impact on my life because I'm fully aware of who and what they are. And they still try to have an influence on my life in a toxic way. And I do my best that when they try to do that, when they try to infiltrate, I do my best to not let it emotionally disturb me too much. I would be lying if I said to you, and I've just forgiven them and it's not their fault, they're horrible. I'd be lying if I said that. Because I don't think it's true. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's how life works. That's just what I think. The closer I've got to my own truth and my own feelings is that actually, you know, I can understand why somebody's horrible and then still think, well, when they're horrible, it makes me feel crap and I don't really want to forgive them. So that's just kind of how I see the truth. But I understand the notion of working towards forgiveness. Thank you, Leroy. That's good. Does a parent make a narcissistic child? Is it their fault? I don't know, man. I mean, look, I can't answer that question. I'm not like a professional in that sense, and I wouldn't want to answer it. I do, you know, I tend to think that a lot of this stuff is to do with the way that we're raised and stuff like that, and we know that in most cases, to become narcissistic is a defense mechanism. However, if you're a parent and you have a child that's become that way, then what do I say to a parent like that? So I don't know. And this is why I always say things are like messy and not easy, and they're not. It's difficult conversations because when we want to be truthful and when we want to be honest, it's not always digestible. Thank you, Zoe. I've accepted the apology. I'm never going to get it from my abusive. I've accepted the apology I'm never going to get from my abusive, toxic narc mum. Still triggers me though, yeah. And look, I think that's good of you to have that honesty. I like see some people that get upset that are in the healing space that I kind of operate in. Some of them that get upset, they really want to push me towards talking more about sort of forgiveness and letting go and all of that stuff. And I think if they really like, if it angers them enough to keep telling me that the way that I see it is wrong when I'm quite comfortable with it, then it points to something else. You can have an unhealed parent that has toxic traits. Yeah, look, toxic traits, narcissistic traits, all of those kind of things. I've got all of them. Really, like I have toxic traits. There's things that as a parent myself, I would have done, interactions that I would have had with my children that certainly they would have perceived as being toxic. I do think the real big difference here is the ability to be able to reflect in certain moments, to be able to revisit, to be able to meet with somebody halfway. You know, we all say and do things when we're really angry, right? And that anger and when we're stuck up in our minds, that can go on for a few days. We can be caught in stuff. I understand all of that, right? I think the difference is to like truly toxic sort of person is we're talking about somebody who you never have that conversation with. They never open up to that, right? They never see that, ever. And I think that's the difference. I don't have any parents or family because of toxic parents. I'm sorry to read that. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and my mum treats my sister and I very horribly, but not my brothers. Common for mums to treat the girls worse than the boys in some cases, and some of that can be jealousy. Particularly girls can get it bad from their mum when they get into their teenage years, and then there starts to be a level of jealousy that comes then from the mum. So that kind of stuff's common. My mum labelled us bad so she could channel her frustration, aggression away from her husband. My mum, I'm assuming that says my mum labelled me as bad so she could channel her frustration and aggression away from her husband. Again, that's scapegoating, right? And very common. I will never forgive. The more I forgive, the more I allowed the toxicity. Yeah, I understand that too. I use meditation to separate emotion from thought so I could view my beliefs and values. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I do breath work as well. And breath work helps me to really release emotions. My mum was the queen of the silent treatment. I never realised how abusive that was. Yeah, I just recently posted on the silent treatment. And again, it's different to taking time to reflect and come away from how you're feeling, right? The silent treatment is the withdrawal of any contact whatsoever to be abusive to you. So yeah, I hear you on that. What should we do when they pop up? If you've cut a toxic parent and they just pop up randomly out of the blue, because that happens, right? They know what they're doing with it as well. And they still, despite the no contact, see you as an extension of themselves. So they'll still just think if they need to do it, right, then it's the right thing to do. They will pop up. And what do I think you should do? I think first that you should acknowledge that's horrible and really difficult for you to deal with, that it will trigger you, right? Listen, there might be a few enlightened people out there that have reached this state where it doesn't even bother them anymore. And I think some people will eventually reach that place, right? But not everybody will. And I don't think it's wrong if you don't. I don't think it's a lack of desire or want or ability on your part. I just think it's the way that it is, right? If not being abused was simply about choices to stop the abuse happening, then abuse wouldn't happen, because everybody would go, well, this is abusive, and then just leave, just walk away. It doesn't happen. That's why people talk about escaping and being survivors, because that's what happens to abuse. So I think you should recognize that first. Sorry to come back to the question. And then secondly, I think if you've cut them out, you should just completely not respond again and stay completely disconnected from it. Fake forgiveness is used to bypass the real problem. Yeah. Right. What I'm going to do is skip down to the bottom and then go back up. I think because I had such a narcissistic parent, I'm very self-aware of how I treat my kids. I am too. Yeah. I'm very self-aware. My dad was an alcoholic, and so I grew up in a bit of a difficult environment, and then I'm sort of like hypersensitive and stuff like that as well. So that can make me like a really good parent sometimes, and then sometimes it can make me, I'm going to say a really bad one. I can make really bad decisions and do really bad things as a parent, right? But like I say, I know in my soul that I have a willingness to be there and to try and put things right. Gaslighting and splitting is abusive. Those people need to learn to fix their shit. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, well said. My mum is currently going through the state of playing the victim to all. Will this ever stop? Look, my mum is going through the state of playing the victim to all. Will this ever stop? The answer is no. The answer is no. Not if they're the people that we're talking about. It will never stop. Okay, they thrive on that, right? That's how they keep themselves as the center of the universe. And what you'll see, if you have a toxic parent, by the way, is that their friendship groups will sort of regularly change, and they'll have these really strong friends that, they call them flying monkeys, the ones who buy into everything about them and believe everything that they say, right? And that, even when presented with the truth, these friends will believe it, right? But what you'll see is that over time, one or two of them, they'll find and then they'll break free. So this toxic person will have different friendship groups pretty regularly. They'll change regularly, right? There'll be no constant friends throughout there. None of them will be constant. They'll always have they normally have one best friend who's really close, but then they'll get dropped as well, because as soon as they're no longer needed, they'll get cut away. Or if they wake up a little bit and start calling things out, they'll get cut away as well, because they always need to be the victim at the heart of it. Yeah. And so, but there'll be this really nice, loving victim. They'll often do charitable things and do really nice things out in societal view. Yeah. So that they can keep up the act. That's the reality, I think. I told my family no more apologies without change of behavior. That's called manipulation, and it hurts. Yeah, I love that. Look, sorry is an action, right? How do you approach them wanting access to your children? I've just ignored mine. Yeah, I think good for you. I just think, probably just ignore them, right? That's what I would do. If you're happy that you don't want them to have access, I would just ignore them. I find I overcompensate with my children because of the toxic, abusive environment that I grew up in. Yeah, I think that's probably common again. I think a lot of people do that. Even with me, you know, my dad was an alcoholic, and well, I went on to have my own problems with addiction as well. So I sort of struggled in the initial years. So with my own kids, right? So I sort of recognise that. So I definitely overcompensate now. And on that, like pseudo, like that kind of fake forgiveness that's used to bypass, I think there's a lot of that going on in the healing space now. That's why I try as much as I can to keep it real. Right? I've always been a rebel at heart, right? And so I kind of take that into the work that I do. And when I hear the kind of status quo, when I look out in the healing space and everybody's saying something, my first thing to do is to be a rebel and question it. And then I follow that question in really and see, is this true? Like, is this real? Is this really the score? And what I find is that there's a lot of like surface level stuff. There's a lot of bypassing going on, particularly like emotional bypassing. I came from an alcoholic home. I told them not to call if they've been drinking, and they did. So I stopped answering. Am I wrong? No, not remotely. That's a very good boundary and good for you. I wanted to ask, since my parents have disowned me, I feel numb towards my parents. I don't have feeling. You should come and do my breath work, Neelam. Reach out to me. I don't know if you've got Instagram, that's the best way to do it. Reach out to me and I can show you where you can try the breath work that can reconnect you to the ways that you feel. It's deep stuff, but it could be really good for you. How do I not let the baggage from a toxic stepdad affect my marriage? Look, let's start with more compassionate language, right? It's not baggage. You're not carrying baggage, right? You're carrying wounds as a result of your experience. And as much as you can, you need to try and share that pain with your partner and allow them to witness it. And allow them to witness your pain and witness your struggle, so that you might not feel alone in it. And try and reflect as much as you can. How often is it showing up in your life and in your marriage, and what can you do about it? And that's not easy, so be kind and gentle to yourself. No, they won't stop making you feel bad if you've gone no contact. They won't, because they see you as an extension of themselves, right? As I've said, so that's the reality. And good for you, yeah? So keep protecting Mel, keep protecting your children. I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're certainly doing the right thing. Right, I'm going to wrap this up now. I think I've gone on for about half an hour, just to let the people know that are still in here. What I do with this, you'll probably see that I make short form content out of some of this stuff. And I also place this whole video, will be on my YouTube by tomorrow. It'll be up there within the next 24 hours. So you can go and see that there. Go and check it out. If you want to see it there, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, because there's loads of other stuff. There's new content as well, where I'll be sharing other people's journeys with toxic parents and kind of reflecting on that as well. And the first video of that will be coming out this week, I would hope. I'll answer this last one, and then I've got a dash. Do you genuinely believe that if a person disowns you, that they never loved you? For example, my mum. I don't know. There's too much context missing there. What I would say is that I don't, very rarely is somebody born completely incapable of that kind of thing. And so it is always in the end something that they've experienced that perhaps makes them go like that. But without context, it's like really difficult to answer that. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks everybody. Take care, and I'll be back again soon.